I will explain that I am here. I'm here in front of the Champagne Cellars, the second stone winery building built in California, 1864. And that's because the press house, the first building, was built in 1862. Now, I am right here at Buena Vista, and the rest of our participants, Mr. Tom Blackwood, general manager of Buena Vista Winery, Susie is our club manager, and Brian Maloney, our winemaker, all here, all at home virtually. And we're going to bring this event to you, our wine club members. Thank you for watching.
You have a little Natalia's in your...
Go ahead, Mr. Maloney. Go right ahead.
You have a little Natalia's in your glass?
I do, actually. And we're going to wait for a few more seconds until maybe some of the people will join us. But Mr. Brian Maloney, perhaps you could take this opportunity to tell us how I live surrounded by vineyards. And 3 nights ago, I'm a mile from the winery, and what the fans came on at 4 o'clock in the morning in my neighborhood. So that tells me that bud break must have happened. And it's certainly been cold. So are we in bud break? Is that official?
Yeah, there's definitely Chardonnay all throughout the county. Sonoma County has started to break bud. It's not, it's a very small percentage of the buds at this point. So it's, it is time to start protecting things, but we're not quite at the point where we have a lot of green growth out there, that it's a super high stress time yet. That'll be probably in about a week, especially if it warms up at all this week. I expect a lot of buds to move really, really quick because things have been swelling. You're just starting to see those little green leaves come out. That hail that came through was kind of nerve-wracking because it'll knock out those swelling buds right now. You can just go up to one of them and you can very easily knock it off the vine. They're very, very tender at this point. As long as the bud is still fairly closed, it's actually not very vulnerable to frost. It's not until the actual green tissue, the leaves have unfolded, that you really start seeing issues with the frost burn. So it's, right now we're looking at a fairly normal year in terms of timing. We're mid-March, and usually this is about when you start seeing those earliest, bud breaking spots start to open up, places like Carneros up on West Side Road in the Russian River Valley. We're seeing at the Deloche Estate as well, a little bit of bud break. The Thompson seedless vines in my backyard here in Calistoga, they've started putting out some leaves as well. So it's pretty much the time of year for things to get started. It's not a super early year. We've had many years where we've seen bud break before the first week of March. Those are very long years to wait. Usually we're concerned about frost up until about May 1st. So, we're looking at about a 5-6 week window of a lot of early mornings for folks to get out there and make sure the fans are turning on when the thermostat tells them to. And, sprinklers in some locations have been getting tested all this past week. Lots of water getting pumped out right now, which is, a lot of people have pretty low reservoirs because we haven't seen much rain. So hopefully, I'd love it to rain this week and rain next week and basically keep on raining until we hit that May 1st, because as long as we get these little storms coming through, it's less likely to have major frost events.
It's the clear, really cold nights that are your biggest fear.
Correct. Yeah. When we have overcast, it's much, much less likely to have any frost. I mean, it can still get cold, but it usually doesn't get down to that, that 28 degrees is really where things start to be very, very vulnerable in the vineyards. Right at freezing, just the nature of the plants and how they warm up during the day and just the microclimates within those within the vineyard itself will prevent too much damage from happening. But once it dips down to below 30, that's when the damage really starts to set in. And you can have years like last year, which was, we had some clear nights where it was dipping down to around 26, 27 degrees multiple times in a row. And there was a tremendous amount of frost damage in 2020. A lot of people, when they look back at 2020, will we'll be talking about the fires that happened. But in reality, what really shortened that crop and made it such a small crop year ended up being the frost events that we saw in the spring of 2020.
Well, should we get started?
Sounds good. I mean, we're going to be recording this and posting this, I'm sure.
Yep.
So we'll get lots of people to get a chance to see it.
Recording as we speak. So why don't you get us started, Susie?
Well, I just want to welcome all the club members that join us today. Thank you so much for being here. And we're going to start, George, the Count, is going to start a little presentation, and after that, followed by Brian. And then I'll say a quick something at the end. But thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for your membership with us. We really appreciate it. So if the count is ready, please take away.
Well, I am so excited to have wine club members and other interested people watching this show. I'm in front of the Champagne Cellars. We're talking about the Natalia Chardonnay. Now, Natalia was my daughter-in-law. You see, on June 1st, 1863, two of my sons married two of General Vallejo's daughters. It was the double wedding of the century, June 1st, 1863. And 150 years to the day of that event, we did a living history reenactment right here on the spot where I'm standing. And in fact, Mr. Brian Maloney, our winemaker, stood in as Attila, who married Natalia Vallejo. She was the older of the two sisters. She was 24, an old maid at the time, considered to be such. But Attila won her heart, true love matches each of these marriages. And they went on to have a very happy marriage, 4 children. And in fact, there is to this day a family in the town of Sonoma that is named Haas, and they are the direct descendants of that union. Val Haas is a wonderful fellow. He has three boys, and 2 of those boys have children. So right now, the great grandsons of myself are alive in this town, and many of these lovely people, the Haas, are in the wine business. So, Brian, tell us about the Natalia Chardonnay.
Thanks, Count. Yeah, the Natalia Chardonnay is coming out of the Green Valley of the Russian River Valley. So this is a really cool appellation in kind of the western part of the county. It's defined by 2 creeks that flow north-south through the appellation and give you just this classic valley characteristics of a valley floor that's very cold and very heavy soils, and then these slopes and ridge lines where it warms up because of inversion layers and are full of very thin soils. What we call the Goldridge soil is essentially the only soil in the Green Valley. In a lot of ways, it's a classic appellation in the European sense, where there's a great consistency in terms of the terroir, in terms of the soil types, in terms of where the vines are planted, the varietals that are planted, and the weather effects that are seen throughout. So because of that, it is a fairly cool location, being so close to the Pacific Ocean. There's a lot of fog and wind that works its way up through Atascadero Creek and such, settles on the valley floor, makes for very, very cold growing conditions on that valley floor, but acts as this beautiful natural air conditioning as we get into the warmer months of summer, making it perfect growing land for both Pinot Noir as well as Chardonnay. The Natalia Chardonnay is coming from 2 vineyards that we work with, farmed by a great friend and partner of ours for many years, Charlie Heinz. The Syrah Vineyard, which is almost a 50-year-old site now, it's just outside of the town of Sebastopol, to the west of Sebastopol, and then the Heinz Vineyard, which was planted by Charlie back in the early 1980s, and lies right above the town of Occidental. So very cold sites, older vines, beautiful concentration that you see in this, and also beautiful balance in these Chardonnays. Both these vineyards had a relatively famous man for the area help plant them. Warren Dutton was really a pioneer in terms of Chardonnay in the Russian River Valley. He is credited with being the first person to successfully plant Chardonnay all the way back in the late 1960s, early 1970s outside of the town of Grayton. And he helped Charlie plant these vineyards and establish them. So you really have that Warren Dutton touch on the sites. In the clonal material that you're seeing, those are the famous Royd clone.
That's Brian Maloney.
Hi, everyone. Just beautiful fruit expression, but then again balanced by that natural acidity that you get in these cooler growing conditions. We harvest these vineyards very late, and in 2018 it was a very extended maturation. We had a really beautiful summer and crafted some fantastic wines, and so these are later picking Chardonnays. We're waiting until the end of September, beginning of October before we even really go out to these vineyards and start assessing the crop in terms of flavor profile and such. Then everything is hand-picked, brought into the winery, whole cluster pressed, and then aged in our French and Hungarian oak barrels in the cellar. On its lees, native yeast fermentation, lees stirring, all the classic techniques that you associate with great Chardonnays.
Well said, Brian. Thank you. This is a wonderful, wonderful wine, classic Chardonnay, great acidity and fruit and balance, and really knocking it out of the park. So thank you.
Delicious.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun with this wine because, it is essentially one grower at two sites. Usually we talk about, just a single site, but here it is one guy doing the farming at the two different sites. So you see his touch on two different terroirs. And I find Serbia and Heights to be quite complementary to each other. It gives you those layers. You have that kind of apparent, kind of spicy apple element, that apple pie flavor profile. But if you really dig into this wine, I feel you start to see little bits of lime peel and other elements come out as well. And that's, I think, a testament to the quality of the fruit that Charlie is growing out there.
Yeah, no, wonderful, wonderful wine. So thank you. Count, why don't you tell us a little bit about Gaza, as our next wine will be the 2018 Gaza Selection Pinot Noir from the Petaluma Gap appellation, and love to hear a little bit about Gaza. I love his history. His story is very amazing.
Thank you. I am happy to talk about my oldest son, Gaza. And I am walking down I'm going to show you folks what it looks like here today. We've got outdoor dining. In fact, great news, everybody. In fact, starting just 2 days ago, we are gone to everyday tastings. So every day of the week, that's Monday through Monday, Tuesday through Tuesday, Wednesday through Wednesday, you get the idea. So I'm walking now into our champagne cellars. And this building, of course, I'm sure many of you know, was saved by our owner, Jean-Charles Boisset. In 2012, he launched a very extensive retrofit of this building. If it hadn't been for the retrofit, this entire building will be lost to history, a pile of rubble, just 2 years later, the August 24th, 2018 South Napa quake. So walking into the champagne cellars now, and here I have a glass and a bottle of the Gaza Noir. I'm remarkable fermentation tanks, because it really is a story of old-fashioned winemaking right here in California, in the oldest winery building making wine today. So I'll quickly tell you about Gaza, the oldest son. He was a military man. And one of the most exciting moments of my life, it was in the summer of 1849, and we were on a wagon train journey from Wisconsin to San Diego on the Santa Fe Trail, and there came a cavalry of dragoons, the United States Army, 30 men on horses flying across the landscape. Gaza saw these men and said to himself, I want to become a cavalryman. And in fact, he went up to them and asked if he could join them, and they agreed. If the parents approved, well, Eleonora was not happy about this, my wife, but he was 17. He was tall for his age, an excellent shot, an expert horseman, as all Hungarians are, at the time anyway. And so the next day, Gaza went off into the desert. What an amazing story. And I love this story of the Petaluma Gap, this area. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks, Count. Yeah, the Gazas is coming from a few vineyards we work with down in the Petaluma Gap. Now, if you look at this wine, you'll notice that it doesn't carry a county appellation. Most wines these days, they'll say, for example, the Green Valley of the Russian River Valley of Sonoma County, or the Sonoma Coast of Sonoma County. But the Petaluma Gap is one of these special appellations that actually covers both Marin as well as Sonoma County. And we are one of the few wineries out there that works with vineyards down in Marin as well. The Isaiah Vineyard in particular is this fantastic site off of Hicks Valley Road. Beautiful slope that the McAvoy family really pioneered in farming down there. It's all these vineyards that we work with in the Petaluma Gap are very late ripening. As the count says, we use those traditional techniques, the open top fermenters, again, all the fruit coming in hand-picked. The Isaiah in 2018 was very special because we saw great stem lignification. And what that means is after the growing season gets to its end, most of the time when the grapes come in, the rachis, the stem that the berries are on, is quite green. But in 18, the Isaiah Vineyard had a lot of browning happen. The stem had started to turn into wood. And when we see that, that's an exciting thing for me as a winemaker, because I get to include those stems now in the fermentation, and they lend this spiciness and this textural element to the wine. And it allows us to do whole cluster fermentation without worrying about extracting out green and bitter flavors. Instead, we get all sorts of perfumes and spice. And so having that Isaiah with all that fruit and spice, I then was able to layer in these other two vineyards in the Petaluma Gap, the Sonoma Stage, which is on the eastern outskirts of Petaluma as you drive over Stage Gulch Road, a site actually picked out by Aubert de Bien, who is probably more famous for his vineyard over in Burgundy, Domaine de la Romanie-Conti. And it's a very heavy clay-based soil, but beautiful aspect, and has actually quite good drainage, even though it has that clay soil because of the nature of the hillside where it's planted. And then finally, the Corda Vineyard, one of the few dry farmed Pinot Noir vineyards in Sonoma County, or I should say in the North Coast, as it is in Marin. An older site farmed by one of those pioneers, Mark Pasternak down in Marin. So all three of those different vineyards coming in together, uniting together, and making this beautiful, layered, fruit forward, but at the same time, just that sultry length and body to it. Beautiful, beautiful wine.
Yeah, very classic Pinot Noir smell and taste and mouthfeel. Great balance. You can tell it's not necessarily the Russian River. That Petaluma Gap, that distinctiveness, definitely just a little more earthy flavor.
You get some of that earthy flavor. That to me is coming out of the Sonoma Stage, but then also there's a richness to the tannins that we don't see in the Russian River Valley. And that's what I think is one of the qualities of the Petaluma Gap, is the way that the velvety texture of the Pinot Noir really develops. And I think a good portion of that is because there is so much more clay soil down in the Petaluma Gap. And so you have vines that have a bit more vigor and a bit more tannin components that are allowed to form in those skins. When you're up in the Russian River Valley, when you're on those really thin, sandy soils, the plants are, for the most part, a bit weaker and don't have quite the same amount of energy and ability to form the density that these vines down in the Petaluma Gap can.
Very nice. Well, as the Count mentioned, Gaza's story is special to me as a military person, former Marine, and his story of joining the Union forces is unbelievable. And to think that his family didn't see him for many years after that, and that he fought in the war and was a POW, I just think is a great testament to the Harasti family and to Gaza, and love to pay homage. And I'll have to say, one of our best living history events, besides the double wedding of the century, was the return of Gaza. We had Abraham Lincoln join us. It had to be the ultimate doppelganger. The guy was tall, had the mark on his face, the whole 9 yards. He was unbelievable. So that was really a great event. So as we know, every great person has a great mom, International Mother's Month, but also a great dad. And so I think we'll go on to our next wine, the Carolee Petit Syrah. So tell us a little bit about the history of Carolee, Count.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. And I do want to further comment on your exposition about Gaza. He also won medals for participating in the New York City draft riots of 1863. We think of New York City as a northern town, but in the Civil War, New York City was a southern town. And they didn't really like the draft to the point that there were riots, and Gaza won medals for his bravery during these riots. He spent 9 months at Camp Ford in Texas. That's where he'd been captured in Texas. It wasn't as bad as other, thankfully, Confederate forts, and returned to Sonoma in 1865 unharmed. And you're right about, we did have Abraham Lincoln stayed at my house actually the night before. So, I've got that going for me. So Carolee or Caroy. And you see, in Carolee, my father, the Count's father, was a remarkable man. Now, I am an only child, and thus all of the care that I received from my father was extraordinary. He taught me how to make wine, which is where the story began, and he could read and write in 12 languages and could speak in 16. And when in 1841, he came with my wife, Eleanor, and our boys, Gaza, Attila, and Arpad, to Wisconsin. He came along with us, with my mother, Anna. So Caroy and Anna. One of the contemporaries in Wisconsin described him as perhaps the single most educated immigrant to America in American history. He already had 10 patents to his name and was a remarkable man. We were inseparable. And so this wine in honor of him, and this vineyard is right, amazingly, quite close to the winery. Perhaps, Tom, you can tell us about that, because it's all right on Old Winery Road. It's amazing.
No, I think you're thinking of the Syrah.
You're thinking, not the Petit
Syrah.
Syrah.
This is the Petit Syrah. Well, disregard that last comment, folks. Take it away, Brian.
Over 200 years, you're bound to have some
You're doing great. You're doing great.
But no, the Petit Syrah, there is some Sonoma Valley Petit Syrah in this wine from the Haas Vineyard, which is across the valley floor, though up off of Arnold Drive, though. And then a little bit of Petit Syrah coming up from the northern parts of Sonoma County, northern Russian River area. Petit Syrah is one of my favorite varieties. In many ways, this is the variety that my family historically in Calistoga grew for many, many generations. And it's one of the varieties that really attracted me to wine and winemaking, because it is such a contrast in terms of looking at these berries out there. They're very small berries, very tight clusters, but incredible intensity comes from them. And it's a variety that also, I think, rewards aging more than just about anything else in anyone's cellar. Petit Syrah, this 2018 that we're enjoying, is an absolute baby. This is a wine to sit on your shelf for a couple more years, right around 6-7 years past vintage, maybe start peeking in at it. But right now we're tasting a wine that needs a lot more time, and that's because the skins of the Petit Syrah are so packed full of tannins and color. I mean, you can see it in this glass. I mean, just absolutely black juice. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff. Lots of dark fruit characteristics. You have to be gentle with Petite in the fermentation. If you over extract, you can make a monster. But my goal is to just coax out those flavors and make something that is delicious and is very rewarding. But like I said, I think this is one for us to come back to in a couple more years.
It's so supple, Brian. It is so amazingly pleasant upon the palate. The plum flavors and are really extraordinary. And the tannins are remarkably tamed. It's astonishing.
again, yeah, no, that's my goal, is to be a little bit more reserved with it. But I think it's a wine that needs a few more years personally. I think it's delicious. Maybe if you got a big steak to go with it, but man, there's nothing like a Petite that's about 10 years old to come back to and really see it shine with the fruit elements will still be there, but it'll be more velvety on the palate, and just really, really delicious and layered in its complexity and flavors.
This 2018, in fact, Brian, is the best Carolee Petit Syrah that you've ever made that I've tried. I mean, really, this is incredible. And I think our listeners would be really interested in the whole story of 2018. What a tale.
Yeah. It's interesting. Over the past few years, everything, it's close yet it's far away. 2018 was rather a larger vintage for us in terms of the crop. Sonoma County just had a really nice growing season. Very high quality fruit coming in. It was the year after the fire, and we were just thrilled that the building itself had been saved. We did have to deal with some conditions later on in the year. But for the most part, it was a really beautiful growing season. There wasn't a lot of challenges out there. We didn't see frost like we saw last year. We were able to pick, I wouldn't say quite at our leisure, but we didn't see the heat spikes that 2017 had, and we didn't have the drought that 2015 had. So in many ways, just a lot of good things going for us throughout that growing season in 2018.
Well, and Brian, again, another great wine is always your style of this balance really shines through with the Petit Syrah, which is one of my favorite varietals, and I consider California classic, right there with Zinfandel, obviously, and I love drinking old Petit Syrah. It's definitely one of those wines you like to buy and put down in your cellar and let it age, but it's also got the fruit and that forwardness that it would be great with the steak tonight, and really cut through that fat. So for those that do have that bottle open, I think you know what to enjoy with dinner. So,
but I would tell you, buy another case of it and put it back in your cellar, because this is definitely one to come back to over time. It will reward.
Yes, call me. Order a case.
Yeah, of course, as all the wines are, right, Susie? 30% off.
That is correct.
On any reorders.
If you call, if you reorder, if you order 3 or 6, if you order 6 bottles, I can even offer complimentary shipping at this time. So call me if you order 3, 30% savings, and then if you order 6, $1 shipping. So please call, and this wine will be great, like Brian said, to save it. I'll sell you a case or 2. I'll be happy to.
Yeah, it's always perfect to have at least a case, so you can have a couple bottles now, wait a few more years, have a few more bottles, and just kind of evolve over time, and the wine will tell you when it's fully ready to finish those last 3 or 4 bottles. So no, that's a great idea, and so one of our goals today was not only to talk about all of these great wines in your club shipments and the opportunity to ask questions, but we thought it would be a good time to promote our optional offer. That is, we do every year, a very small, limited offer. The reason it is optional is we don't have enough for everybody. So we allow members to pick, accept or not accept this particular shipment. And Susie, why don't you just tell us which 4 wines, and then Brian, maybe give us a little bit about the winemaking.
Absolutely, and they are all 2019 vintage, and it's one of my favorite shipments, actually. This year we offer the Grenache, 2019 Grenache, 2019 Valdegay, 2019 Carignan, and the 2019 Mourvedre. It is exceptional. I love all of them, especially the Grenache. Our club members do as well. And there is a retail value of $186. We offer for $125. It's great savings. And most of our club members, they call, they have some more, a lot of people have ordered already and they want to order more. And I try to be very careful how much I'm selling now, because I always sell out every year since I have been a Buena Vista. And Tom knows it happens every time. We have to deal with it. And but our club members love it. And so do I. I think it's such an exciting time for the spring. And I love all the wines, and Brian can talk about them all right now, but call right away if you want to get some of that wine, and I can put it aside for you. You can orderable later, but for now, we don't have enough for everybody, hence the word optional. So try to get some of those wines if you can and save it. So Brian, please talk about the wines. Start with the Grenache, please.
Well, I'll start with the Grenache. That, you know, what's interesting is these four wines, three of them are essentially single vineyards. They're not very commonly planted grapes, but Grenache is actually a blend of a few different sites that we work with, and it's a fascinating grape. It comes from the south of France. It can have such richness and intensity to it, but also be very pretty and have these kind of spicy, high-tone fruit flavors. So the backbone to it is coming out of a couple sites in up in the Russian River Valley, one called El Diablo, which is a famous Grenache site off the East Side Road, and then a younger site called Frank Johnson's, which is from an old family farm on the northern edge of the Russian River. Grenache definitely likes a little bit more heat. So those northern Russian River sites, really, you need to be a little bit further north, otherwise it won't quite get ripe. And then to balance it out, we have two sites down in the Sonoma Valley, the Haas Vineyard off Lawndale Road, which really gives us a textural element that we don't see, a little bit more intensity. It's a little bit cooler of a site. And then the Radiant Ridge, which is this high elevation site outside of Bennett Valley, which gives us a lot of really just kind of huge flavors because of those elevations. Grenache in a lot of ways is kind of like Pinot Noir. You have to be fairly delicate with it. Although out in the vineyard, you grow it a little bit differently because it tends to want to put out more fruit than Pinot Noir does for sure. So it's a fun one. It can be very juicy and rich. And I think we've been able to deliver quite nicely with the Grenache for Buena Vista over the last several years. Now, the other three varieties, the Mourvèdre, the Carignan, I believe, did you say?
Carignan, that's correct.
Carignan, no Mourvèdre this year.
I apologize, Brian. It's no Mourvèdre, Charbonneau.
Well, we are doing a Mourvèdre. It's not getting bottled though until May, so that's why wasn't.
That's why I didn't make it in there, but.
But yeah, so the Carignan is great old vines up just outside of Ukiah, organically farmed by by Aldous Bolton. It's called the Caballo Blanco Vineyard, dry farmed, head trained. I think it's one of the great Carignan vineyards in California, and phenomenal stuff. Just really small, dark fruit coming in, pretty wine. The Valdegay coming out of Calistoga and the Charbonneau both coming out of Calistoga. These are, kind of the traditional old varieties of, kind of post World War II California varieties that, have a place and had an important place in California's history, especially in the Napa Valley, but over the past several decades have, for the most part, been torn out and replaced by Cabernet Sauvignon. Valdegay, to me, is kind of this beautiful cross between a Malbec and a Pinot Noir. You get these really pretty blue fruit characteristics, but it's fairly soft and textured in terms of the wine. Charbonneau is on the opposite end. It's this kind of burly, tannic, rich, dense wine, more akin to a Petit Syrah. And the history of Charbonneau, and especially in the northern Napa Valley, is really quite remarkable and something that should be celebrated. So it's great to be able to work with a little bit of fruit from the Shy Poke Vineyard and make this Charbonneau. All of these wines, the Grenache and the Valdegay were bottled about 6 months ago, so they should be drinking pretty nicely right now. The Charbonneau and the Carignan, though, were bottled more recently, so they probably are pretty tight. So I would imagine that, a few more months of aging and they will be absolutely beautiful wines to enjoy.
Thanks, Brian. Those are, we're so lucky. I mean, the whole program itself, I feel very privileged to sell them, to offer them to our guests, all the different varieties, as we call the obscure varietals. And so this program is awesome. And I know Christine loves the Charbonneau. She commented she just picked hers up and was at the winery. So let's see what her comment is. So they've been pouring lots of Buena Vista. They just moved from Texas. And so we appreciate that. And like Susie said, though, order these now. We oversell every year.
Every
So,
time, every year, absolutely.
It is a given, and so don't miss out. And on top of it, it's our best pricing. So it really is a reward for our wine club members.
Well, in the Charbonneau in particular, it's a beautiful variety. I wish we could make more of it, but when it comes down to it, there's less than 100 acres of that variety in the state of California. It's very rare today, which is unfortunate because it does make beautiful wine, and we're pretty lucky to have good friends that want to let us work with their fruit, like the Heights family. So it's great stuff, but it is something that we never will have very much of it because of just the nature of these more obscure varieties.
Yeah, and I think sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. Just quickly, Brian, was Charbonneau like one of the most widely planted varieties in California at one time, or
in the Napa Valley?
In the Napa Valley.
Yeah, Valdegay and Charbonneau 60 years ago, it would have been in the top 5 in the Napa Valley.
Wow.
But then as Cabernet Sauvignon, kind of leapt to prominence and people understood how to make great cabs in the Napa Valley, bit by bit, that acreage has been replaced.
Excellent. Go ahead, Susie. Sorry.
No, and what I love about those wines is we have great Pinot Noirs, have great cabs. We know that in Chardonnay, but this is different. They're very unique. So if you can order some of that and try something different, it's a great opportunity to try something that is not, you're not going to find those wines everywhere. You just don't find those wines.
Yeah, and it's not just the reds; it's also the whites. The French Colombards and all of the other great
the Trousseau Gris, the Albarino.
Yep.
So yeah.
Pinot Gris release hopefully in the next month or so. We'll do Pinot Gris and sushi, which is maybe one of our first events, quote unquote. And when I'm on that, before I kick it to the count, I just want to mention we also have our spring cleaning sale coming up. It will be by reservation, April 10th through the following weekend. I believe it's April 18th. So it's 2 full weekends in the full week, but it's by appointment. So for all of our spring cleaning sale friends, please go on Cellar Pass and make that appointment. Also, back to these optional wines, these small lots, obscure wines, we will be pouring these, right, Susie?
That's correct. Next weekend. And I'll be there pouring, so come and see me. I'll be happy to assist and sell you some of those wines by March 20th, next weekend.
So yes, next weekend, March 20th, members and guests have the opportunity to taste these wines. We will have a flight for you to enjoy. We historically like to do a little food pairing a couple different weekends, but obviously with the COVID and all the restrictions, we are unable to, but this is still going to open some wines for you guys to try during your next visit. So with that, Count, where are you right now?
Well, thank you, Tom, Susie, and Brian. I'm here in the famous Bubble Lounge, and we miss you all so much. It's been so long. Many of you have been in the Bubble Lounge. There is no more spectacular space to consume genuine champagnes or sparkling wines than the Bubble Lounge. And here in March of 2020, I am filled with optimism, and I am so excited with the prospect of having people visit us again soon. And before I close, I want to comment on just how grateful we are to you, our wine club members. We did not experience a large leaving of wine club members over the last year, and for that we are very, very grateful. And it's a testament to you, wonderful wine club members. And as we talked about these little known rare varietals, it's because of you that we can have this program where we can guarantee we will sell all these bottles, because as wonderful as they are, the sad fact of the wine business is that lesser known varietals do not sell in the wholesale marketplace. It just doesn't happen because it's called a hand sell and really no one wants it. So generally in wine shops, grocery stores, there's 8 varietals, maybe 9. That's it. And so because of you wine club members, we have the opportunity to have a genius winemaker, Brian Maloney, make these wines, a great wine club manager, a fantastic general manager. Thank you all. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, is any other questions anybody may have? Just again, yeah, thank you, everybody. We are privileged and honored to be there for you, to have you as part of our membership. And we can't wait to see you back at the winery. All the best. Cheers to everybody.
Cheers.
Have a great
Thank you
rest
so
of
much,
your
everybody. Thank you so much.